My parents kicked me and my kids out of the family party like we were strangers, so I cut off their mortgage, and what happened next shattered their perfect little illusion. I shut everything down. I thought anonymously paying my parents' mortgage for 3 years was the ultimate act of love, a silent thank you for everything. But it turned out to be just the prologue to the most brutal, public betrayal of my life. A betrayal that shattered my family and forced me to choose between my self-respect and the people who gave me everything. Our cramped two-bedroom apartment, a constant reminder of the life I was fighting to build, felt especially small that morning. The stale coffee smell mingled with the faint scent of crayon wax from Lily and Ethan's art projects, a usual weekday chaos, but beneath it all, a nervous flutter in my stomach. The elegant cream envelope, announcing my parents' 40th anniversary, had arrived weeks ago, promising a lavish celebration. I'd splurged on new outfits, found a meaningful gift, and despite the simmering tensions, genuinely looked forward to celebrating David and Susan. I just never imagined that the family who raised me would treat my children and me like unwelcome strangers at their own celebration. I'm Chloe Reed, 32. A single mother of two incredible kids, Lily and Ethan, and a financial advisor who clawed her way to a successful career despite life throwing every curveball imaginable. Growing up in suburban Boston, my relationship with my parents, David and Susan Reed, was, for the most part, normal. Dad was an engineer, Mom a third-grade teacher. They weren't overly affectionate, no big hugs or I love yous constantly, but they provided stability. Education was their unwavering mantra. I still remember Susan's proud smile when I brought home straight A's, and David's rare, awkward but sincere hugs after my high school graduation. Following their unspoken expectations, I went to Boston University on a partial scholarship, majoring in finance. That's where I met Daniel Thompson, my charming economics classmate. He seemed like the perfect future, good family, promising career. My parents approved, of course. We married at 22, fresh out of college. I landed a coveted spot at a respected financial advisory firm. Daniel joined an investment bank. We bought our first small house, and for a while, everything clicked. Sunday dinners at their house were a ritual, Susan with her famous apple pie, David holding court on the stock market with Daniel. When Lily arrived at 24, my parents were over the moon to be grandparents. Ethan followed 2 years later, completing our picture-perfect family. Those early years of parenthood? Exhausting, yes, but breathtakingly beautiful. David and Susan helped with babysitting sometimes, always careful not to interfere, as Susan would always say. But the fairy tale cracked hard. Lily was just 4, Ethan barely 2. Daniel started working late, then weekends. Then came the texts, between him and his assistant. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He didn't apologize. He just looked at me and said he wasn't cut out for family life and wanted out. 3 months later, he'd vanished to Chicago for a fresh start, leaving me with 2 small children, minimal contact, and perpetually late child support. The divorce didn't just blindside me. It felt like it blindsided my parents even more. I could almost taste their disappointment, though they never said the words directly. Instead, Susan would offer veiled criticisms. Maybe if you hadn't been so focused on your career, Chloe, or marriage takes compromise, you know. Their support became drenched in judgment. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Sarah, seemed to hit every single mark in their eyes. She married her college sweetheart, Mark, a successful dentist, straight after graduation. They bought a beautiful house, just blocks from David and Susan. Sarah became a part-time graphic designer, but her main focus, her shining achievement, was homemaking. 2 perfectly timed children, Grace and Leo, a pristine house, homemade organic baby food. Sunday dinners at my parents' house slowly transformed into showcases for Sarah's domestic perfection. But I wasn't Sarah. Despite the crushing weight of single parenthood, I poured myself into my career. Late nights, extra certifications, I built a reputation in wealth management. By 30, I was a senior financial advisor, managing portfolios for high-net-worth clients. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was securing their futures while my own felt perpetually teetering on the edge. That same year, David announced his early retirement at 62. Back problems, a reasonable package. What they hadn't revealed, though, was their true financial reality. Years of helping Sarah and Mark, down payments, renovations, private school for Grace and Leo, had silently hollowed out David and Susan's savings. Then, one tense family dinner, Susan asked to speak with me privately. In their bedroom, she handed me a past-due mortgage notice. 3 months behind. Foreclosure looming. David's pension wasn't enough, and they were too mortified to tell anyone. Without a second thought, I offered to help. My promotion meant a significant salary bump, and though money was still tight with 2 growing kids, the thought of them losing their home of 30 years tore at me. I committed to their $1,800 monthly mortgage payments. A massive sacrifice that meant shelving my own dream of buying a house for Lily and Ethan. David and Susan accepted, a mix of gratitude and visible discomfort. David promised it was temporary. He said they'd get back on their feet. But months bled into years, and it was painfully clear this was a long-term arrangement. I never complained. I saw it as repayment for my stable childhood. What truly stung was that this massive financial undertaking remained our secret. At family gatherings, David and Susan still lavished praise on Sarah and Mark's lavish lifestyle. Then they'd drop subtle, pointed digs about my unfortunate situation. I once overheard David telling his brother about Sarah looking at vacation properties, only to follow it up with a comment about me still not having found my footing after the divorce. Despite these toxic undercurrents, I tried to maintain a cordial relationship, mostly for Lily and Ethan. They adored their grandparents, though visits became less frequent. David and Susan simply seemed to prefer spending time with Grace and Leo. And when we did visit, Susan would constantly correct my parenting, from Lily's snacks to Ethan's jacket. 3 years into paying their mortgage, it was a routine. Every first of the month, the transfer went through. Every Sunday, we attempted family dinner, though increasingly at Sarah's showcase home. And every night, I tucked Lily and Ethan into bed in our cramped 2-bedroom, whispering promises that someday I'd give them the stability and space they deserved. Then came that invitation. An elegant cream envelope, gold embossed, Sarah's touch, naturally, as the self-appointed family event coordinator. David and Susan's 40th wedding anniversary. The Westbrook Hotel. Upscale. Sit-down dinner, live music, intimate gathering. Despite the growing chasm between us, a genuine spark of happiness ignited. 40 years? That was something to celebrate. I marked the date immediately. We're so looking forward to having everyone there, Susan said, but her tone suggested everyone might not include me and the kids. Sarah's put so much effort into planning. I wouldn't miss it, I assured her, trying to keep my voice light. Lily and Ethan will be so excited to dress up for a special occasion with their grandparents. A slight pause. Oh, Chloe. We were thinking this might be an adults-only event. The hotel is quite formal, and it'll run late. I swallowed the bitter disappointment. Of course, I understand. I'll arrange for a sitter. The next 3 weeks were a blur of preparations. Budget tight always. But I splurged on a navy blue cocktail dress. It made me feel confident, a sensation I hadn't felt in years. And the gift? A custom photo album chronicling their 40 years. I'd secretly contacted family for old pictures, spent hours curating, writing heartfelt captions. Finding a sitter, though, proved a nightmare. My usual was booked, backups unavailable. Anxiety gnawed at me. Lily and Ethan, sensing my excitement, asked daily about my dress, about Grandma and Grandpa's big party. 2 days before, I finally secured a recommended sitter through a colleague. Relief washed over me, a warm, soft blanket. Then my phone shrieked at 7 a.m. the day of the event. Miss Reed, I'm so sorry, a congested voice rasped. I've come down with the flu. No way I can watch your children tonight. Panic seized me. I called every parent friend, scoured care.com, even considered asking my building super about his teenage daughter. Nothing. By noon, I faced an impossible choice, miss my parents' anniversary or bring Lily and Ethan. I called Susan, explaining, Mom, I'm so sorry, my sitter canceled last minute. I've tried everyone. A long, dramatic sigh. Oh, Chloe. Sarah went to such lengths to create an elegant evening. I know it's not ideal, I said, holding on to my composure for dear life. But the kids will be on their best behavior. I've talked to them about proper etiquette, and they're so excited to see everyone. We won't stay late. A pause. An agonizingly long pause. I suppose it can't be helped, she finally conceded, her tone dripping with resignation. Just make sure they're dressed appropriately. That afternoon, I prepped the kids like they were going to meet royalty. 8-year-old Lily, in a purple dress with a cardigan. 6-year-old Ethan, adorable in khakis and a button-down with a clip-on tie. I reviewed indoor voices, please and thank you, no running. Why do we have to be extra good tonight, Mommy? Lily asked, as I fixed her hair. Because this is a very important day for your grandparents, I explained. 40 years of marriage is a huge accomplishment. That's like forever. Ethan exclaimed, wrestling with his tie. It certainly is, I smiled, helping him. And someday, maybe you'll celebrate an anniversary like this, too. We left at 5:30 p.m., gift and card in hand. The kids practically vibrated with excitement in the back of our aging Honda Civic. Lily clutched a handmade card with a surprisingly good drawing of David and Susan holding hands. Ethan had contributed glitter, perhaps too much glitter, but the sentiment was pure. As I drove, a strange cocktail of emotions churned inside me, fierce pride in my beautiful, well-behaved children, gnawing anxiety about how they'd be received, a foolish hope that maybe tonight, just maybe, this night could begin to heal the growing rift. And beneath it all, a tiny, hot ember of resentment. I, the one paying their mortgage, had to justify bringing my children to a family celebration. We pulled into the Westbrook circular driveway at 5:55. A valet approached. I almost used the service, then remembered my budget. I'll self-park, thank you. I caught the flash of judgment in his eyes as he glanced at my decade-old Honda. Parking in the far corner, I helped the children out, straightening their outfits one last time. Remember, I knelt down, inside voices. Please and thank you. And no running. We know, Mom, Lily said, with the slight eye roll she'd recently developed. Ethan nodded solemnly. We'll make you proud, Mommy. His sincerity nearly broke my heart. I squeezed both their hands, the gift bag swaying on my wrist, Susan's hesitant permission echoing in my mind. Little did I know, crossing that hotel threshold wouldn't just be the beginning of the end. It would be the end of the beginning, shattering my relationship with my parents as I'd always known it. The Westbrook Hotel's grand ballroom sparkled, almost painfully bright. Crystal chandeliers, floral centerpieces, gold chargers, champagne flutes. A string quartet played a little too softly. There, by a David and Susan, 40 years of love photo backdrop, were my parents. Susan in an elegant silver dress, David distinguished in charcoal. Lily tugged my hand. Can we say hi to Grandma and Grandpa? Of course, sweetie. As we approached, Susan's genuine smile froze, replaced by something stiff, almost pained. David's eyebrows rose, but he recovered quickly. Chloe, Susan said, her voice tight, you made it. Happy anniversary, I replied, kissing her cheek, presenting the gift. This is from all three of us. David took the bag. Thank you for coming. Lily stepped forward, beaming, offering her handmade card. I drew you and Grandma holding hands. Susan took it, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. How creative. Thank you, Lily. Ethan, suddenly shy, hid behind my legs, managing a quiet, happy anniversary. The children look nice, David commented, his tone suggesting genuine surprise. Before I could respond, Sarah appeared, flanked by Mark, Grace, and Leo. Sarah's emerald dress probably cost more than my entire month's salary. Mark's suit was clearly tailored. Grace and Leo, though only a year older than mine, seemed more polished, more contained. Mom, Dad, Sarah exclaimed, embracing them. The room looks incredible. The florist nailed it. Then she turned to me, her expression a barely veiled sneer. Chloe, I thought this was adults only. My sitter canceled last minute, I explained, my voice level. I tried everyone. Sarah's mouth tightened. Well, we've arranged the seating very specifically. This completely throws off the table plan. I'm sure we can make adjustments, I said, holding on to my composure for the children. I suppose they can sit at your table, she conceded, reluctantly. But there are speeches planned, a champagne toast. It's really not appropriate for children. I felt Lily press closer, sensing the unspoken tension. We won't stay for the entire evening, I promised. Sarah merely sighed, then turned back to David and Susan. The photographer wants family portraits before dinner. We should do that now. I moved to join them, but Sarah clarified, just Mom, Dad, Mark, the kids, and me first. Then we'll do the extended family. The distinction was a cruel, sharp knife. Her family was the real family. We were just extensions. My cheeks burned with humiliation. I nodded, leading Lily and Ethan toward our assigned table. It was in the back, furthest from the dance floor and head table. I recognized a few distant cousins, David's former coworkers. They greeted us politely, then their conversation immediately pivoted to topics that perfectly excluded me. Neighborhood association gossip, country club events I couldn't even dream of affording. Lily and Ethan, bless their hearts, sat quietly, whispering questions. I gave them coloring books and crayons from my purse, earning a disapproving glare from our cousin across the table. Throughout the cocktail hour, I watched David and Susan circulate, embraced by friends and family. They stopped at every table, except ours. Sarah flitted about, clearly in her element as co-hostess, occasionally shooting meaningful glances our way whenever Lily or Ethan dared to make the slightest sound. Dinner arrived, an elegant three-course meal, clearly not designed for children. Ethan grimaced at his poached salmon. Lily picked at her risotto. I whispered promises of pizza tomorrow if they just tried a few bites. Midway through the main course, Ethan reached for his water glass, misjudged the distance. The glass tipped. Water cascaded across the tablecloth. It wasn't a disaster, just a small spill barely reaching the bread basket, but Ethan's face crumpled in mortification. I'm sorry, Mommy, he whispered, eyes brimming. It's okay, buddy, I assured him, quickly blotting with my napkin. Accidents happen. Before I could fully comfort him, Susan materialized beside our table, her expression thunderous. Chloe, she hissed, leaning into my ear, this is exactly why we suggested an adults-only event. Mom, it's just water, I replied, keeping my voice low, despite the heat rising in my face. The tablecloth isn't even that wet. It's not just the water, she continued, her voice razor-sharp. Your children have been fidgeting all evening. Grace and Leo know how to behave at formal events. The comparison stung, a venomous dart. They're being exceptionally well-behaved for their ages. Ethan apologized immediately. Susan straightened, subtly scanning the room as if checking who might be witnessing this public shaming. Perhaps it would be best if you took them home. This environment clearly isn't suitable for them. You want us to leave? I asked, disbelief choking me. Your own daughter and grandchildren? I'm thinking of everyone's comfort, she replied, her voice eerily calm. Including yours. The children seemed tired. They're fine. I insisted. We haven't even had dessert yet. David appeared then, placing a hand on Susan's shoulder. Everything all right here? Chloe's children are having difficulty with the formal setting, Susan explained, as if I weren't present. I suggested they might be more comfortable at home. David glanced at Ethan's still watery eyes, Lily's confused expression. That's probably best, he agreed. This isn't really a children's event. The heat in my face intensified, a full-blown inferno, as nearby guests pretended not to listen. You're asking us to leave your anniversary party because of a small water spill? It's not just the spill, David said, lowering his voice conspiratorially. This is an important night for us, Chloe. We have colleagues and friends here. It reflects poorly when. I challenged, my voice still quiet, but vibrating with suppressed rage. When your divorced daughter and her fatherless children don't meet your standards of perfection? His expression hardened. That's uncalled for. We're simply suggesting what's best for everyone. Sarah appeared, completing the circle of intervention around our table. Is there a problem? She asked, though her tone suggested she knew exactly what was happening. We're fine, I said firmly. The children and I will stay for dessert, then we'll head home as planned. Susan shook her head. I think it would be better if you left now, before the speeches begin. We don't want any disruptions. I looked from her to David, searching for any flicker of the parents who had raised me, who had once held my hand when I was Ethan's age. I found nothing but social embarrassment and cold disappointment. With every ounce of dignity I could muster, I stood. Lily, Ethan, we're going home. But why, Mommy? Lily asked, confusion etched on her small face. I'm being good. Yes, you are, sweetheart, I assured her, helping Ethan from his chair. Both of you are being wonderful. Grandma and Grandpa just think it's past your bedtime. But it's only 7:30. Ethan pointed out, innocently. Sarah smirked. Children need their sleep. I gathered our belongings, acutely aware of the hushed conversations, the pitying glances from nearby tables. As we walked out, I turned to David and Susan one last time. Congratulations on 40 years. I hope it was worth it. The walk through that glittering ballroom felt eternal. Lily clutched my hand. Ethan, sensing something was deeply wrong, had gone completely silent. I nodded politely to those we passed, maintaining a facade of normalcy while my insides twisted with white-hot humiliation and simmering rage. In the parking lot, as I fumbled with the car lock, David caught up to us, slightly out of breath. Chloe, don't be dramatic, he said. This isn't personal. It's about appropriate behavior and settings. Not personal? I repeated, incredulous. You just kicked your only grandchildren out of a family celebration because of a water spill. It wasn't just that, he insisted. The constant whispering, the coloring at the table. My children. I finally let my voice rise, now that we were safely outside. Well-behaved children who were excited to celebrate with their grandparents. David ran a hand through his thinning hair. Maybe if you had maintained a stable household, they would understand proper etiquette. Sarah's children don't. I cut him off, my voice shaking. Don't you dare compare them again. I'm just saying, choices have consequences, Chloe. Your decision to divorce. My decision? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Daniel left us, Dad. He cheated and abandoned his family. That wasn't my choice. There are always two sides, he replied, his eyes cold. And in that precise moment, I saw him for who he was, not the father who coached my soccer team, but a man utterly consumed by appearances, far more concerned with public perception than his own daughter's well-being. Get in the car, kids, I said, opening the back doors. Once they were buckled, I turned back to David. I've been paying your mortgage for 3 years without complaint. I've swallowed every critical comment, every comparison to Sarah's perfect life. But humiliating my children like this? This crosses a line. Something flickered in his eyes, perhaps the first flicker of recognition that he'd gone too far. But instead of an apology, he simply said, "You're overreacting. Call your mother tomorrow when you've calmed down." I got into the car without another word. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of them in the rearview mirror, David returning to the hotel, Susan standing, watching our departure, her expression unreadable in the distance. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Ethan asked from the back seat. I hadn't even realized tears were streaming down my face. Wiping them away quickly, I forced a smile into my voice. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements, buddy. Everything will be okay. But as we drove home in silence, the children eventually falling asleep, I knew. Nothing would be okay. Not for a very, very long time. Our apartment felt impossibly small and unnervingly quiet when we got home. I moved mechanically through bedtime, helping them change, brushing teeth, reading a story, my mind a turbulent storm. Ethan, emotionally exhausted, fell asleep quickly. But Lily, with her 8-year-old's acute perception, lingered. "Mommy," she whispered, as I tucked her comforter around her, "are Grandma and Grandpa mad at us?" The question pierced my heart. I sat on the edge of her bed, choosing my words so carefully. "No, sweetheart. They're not mad at you or Ethan. You both behaved wonderfully tonight. Then why did they want us to leave?" Her blue eyes, so like mine, searched my face for the truth. I sighed. Sometimes adults have complicated feelings that have nothing to do with children. Grandma and Grandpa were probably just stressed about their party. But they love us, right? The uncertainty in her voice tightened my throat. Of course they do, I assured her, praying I wasn't lying. Everyone has bad days, even grandparents. Lily seemed to consider this, then asked the question I'd been dreading. Do they love Grace and Leo more than us? I stroked her hair, buying time, fighting back tears. Love isn't something that runs out, Lily. It's not like there's only so much to go around. It wasn't an answer, and we both knew it. Lily eventually drifted off, but her question haunted me as I collapsed onto our worn sofa in the living room. The fancy dress I'd been so excited to wear now felt like a ridiculous costume from someone else's life. Sleep was a cruel stranger that night. I replayed every agonizing moment: Susan's fixed smile, Sarah's disdain, David's words in the parking lot. Had I misinterpreted? Overreacted? The rational part of me screamed no. But decades of family dynamics, of being the sensitive one, had conditioned me to question myself. Around 3 a.m., I finally checked my phone. Several missed calls and texts, but not from my parents or Sarah. Instead, David's sister, Aunt Carol, had called twice, along with my cousin Jessica and 2 of Susan's oldest friends. A text from Jessica simply read, "That was horrible. Are you and the kids okay?" At least someone had noticed the injustice. I was composing a reply when a text from Susan finally popped up. "You always were sensitive. We'll talk when you've calmed down." No apology. No acknowledgement of how they'd treated their own grandchildren. Just a swift dismissal of my feelings as oversensitivity, a pattern as old as my childhood. I decided not to respond. Any reply from my current emotional state would only escalate. Instead, I made tea, watched the city lights, and wondered how my relationship with my parents had withered so completely. Morning arrived, bringing no answers, only the immediate, relentless demands of parenthood. Breakfast. Reassuring the kids. Lily was subdued, but Ethan, bless him, seemed to have bounced back, chattering about a video game. I maintained a cheerful facade, though it drained what little energy I had left. "Can we visit Grandma and Grandpa today?" Ethan asked innocently, munching cereal. "Not today, buddy," I replied. "They're probably tired after their big party. Will they come here?" Lily's question held that same raw uncertainty from the night before. "I don't think so, sweetie. How about we go to the park instead? Weather's supposed to be nice." They agreed, but without their usual enthusiasm. All day, I caught Lily watching me, her young face troubled. Ethan, by contrast, threw himself into play, as if trying to compensate for the tension he sensed. By Sunday evening, I still hadn't heard from David. Susan sent one more text. "Hope you had time to reflect on your behavior. We should discuss this before next Sunday's dinner." My behavior? As if I was the one who'd publicly humiliated family members over a water spill. That message cemented it. I would maintain distance until I received a genuine apology. Monday morning. Back to the grind. I dropped the kids at school, extra hugs and reassurances, then headed to the office. Client portfolios. Market analyses. My focus was shattered. My colleague, Megan, noticed during our team meeting. "Chloe, are you okay?" she asked when we were alone. "You seem off today." The simple kindness in her question nearly broke me. Before I knew it, I was telling her everything. The mortgage payments, the anniversary party, the public dismissal of my children. Megan listened without interruption, her expression growing, increasingly outraged. When I finished, she shook her head in disbelief. "Chloe, that's not normal or acceptable. You realize that, right?" "I know it was horrible," I admitted, my voice small. "But they're still my parents. Parents who took your financial support for 3 years, then treated you and your kids like unwelcome strangers," she countered, her voice firm. "Would you accept that behavior from anyone else in your life?" Her question hit me with the force of a physical blow. Would I? If a friend had treated my children that way, would I be making excuses for them? The answer was an unequivocal no. "You deserve better," Megan continued. "And more importantly, your children deserve better. Lily and Ethan need to see their mother standing up for herself and for them." She was right. The humiliation I felt was nothing compared to the raw confusion my children were experiencing. Lily's questions haunted me. Do they love Grace and Leo more than us? How many more incidents like this would it take before my children internalized the message that they were somehow less worthy of love and respect? That evening, I found Lily had torn up a drawing she'd been working on for days, a family portrait that included David and Susan. I made a mistake, she explained, avoiding my eyes. I need to start over. What was the mistake, sweetie? I asked gently. She hesitated, then whispered, I don't think Grandma and Grandpa want to be in our family pictures anymore. Her words shattered something deep inside me. The last flimsy thread of justification I'd been clinging to snapped. My children were being hurt by my parents' behavior, and I had been allowing it to happen, all in the name of family harmony. That night, after the children were asleep, I called Megan. I don't know what to do, I confessed. Cut ties completely? Confront them? Pretend nothing happened? What would you advise a client to do? She asked, her voice pragmatic. If someone came to you with this exact situation, what would you tell them? It was a brilliant reframing. As a financial advisor, I routinely help clients make difficult decisions based on their best interests, not emotional attachments. I'd tell them to assess the relationship in terms of health and reciprocity, I said slowly, to consider if the arrangement was beneficial or harmful to all parties. And I'd advise them to establish clear boundaries with financial consequences if those boundaries were violated. Megan's smile was audible over the phone. Exactly. So, what boundaries do you need to set with your parents? The question kept me awake that night, but this time, it was different. This wasn't circular worry, it was productive contemplation. By morning, I had searing clarity. I would no longer subsidize people who didn't respect me or my children, regardless of our blood connection. The realization was both terrifying and incredibly liberating. My parents had held emotional power over me my entire life. But I held financial power I had never exercised. It was time to balance the scales. Monday morning, exactly 1 week after the anniversary party disaster, my phone pinged with a banking notification. Reminder, scheduled transfer to Reed Mortgage tomorrow. The timing felt almost cosmic. The first of the month was approaching. The automatic transfer of $1,800 to David and Susan's mortgage account was due to process in 24 hours. For 3 years, that transfer had happened without question, without acknowledgement. My monthly contribution to family harmony. I stared at the notification, a strange calm settling over me. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect, boundaries, and teaching my children what behavior was acceptable in relationships. If I continued supporting parents who could publicly humiliate their grandchildren, what message would that send to Lily and Ethan? Before making any moves, I needed to understand my legal obligations. During lunch, I called my friend Andrew, a contracts attorney. I've been paying my parents' mortgage for 3 years, I explained, outlining the whole wretched situation. Is there any legal requirement for me to continue? Is your name on the mortgage? He asked. No, it's in theirs. I just make the payments directly to their account. Any written agreement? Nothing formal. It was a verbal arrangement when David retired early. Andrew's response was clear. Legally, you have no obligation to continue payments. Morally, that's another question. But legally, you're free to stop at any time. I thanked him, ending the call, the path forward crystallizing in my mind. That evening, after the children were in bed, I composed an email to both my parents. Dear Mom and Dad, I've spent the past week reflecting on what happened at your anniversary celebration. The public humiliation of my children over a small water spill and normal, well-behaved childlike behavior was deeply hurtful and concerning. For 3 years, I have faithfully paid your mortgage of $1,800 monthly without complaint. I did this out of love and respect for you both, despite the financial strain it placed on me as a single mother. I never mentioned these payments to anyone, honoring your wish to keep this arrangement private. However, I cannot in good conscience continue financially supporting a household that does not show basic respect to me or my children. Effective immediately, I will be discontinuing the mortgage payments. If you wish to discuss resuming financial support in the future, I would need the following: a sincere apology to Lily and Ethan for how they were treated, Acknowledgement of the double standard applied to my children versus Sarah's. Family counseling to address the ongoing patterns of favoritism and judgment. A commitment to treating all your grandchildren with equal love and respect. I love you both and value family relationships, but not at the expense of my children's emotional well-being or my own self-respect. Sincerely, Chloe. My finger hovered over the send button for several minutes. This email would irrevocably change everything. It would likely unleash family drama beyond anything we'd experienced. But it would also unequivocally establish that my children and I deserved respect. I pressed send, then immediately logged into my banking app and canceled the automatic transfer scheduled for the next day. The finality of these actions left me breathless, but certain. To minimize the immediate fallout, I temporarily blocked David's, Susan's, and Sarah's numbers. I needed space to maintain my resolve, free from guilt trips or accusations. I did, however, send a brief text to Aunt Carol, explaining I'd be taking some time away from my parents and why. She'd always been the most reasonable family member. I needed at least one relative to understand my side. The next morning, I sat down with Lily and Ethan before school. I need to tell you something important, I began. We're going to take a little break from seeing Grandma and Grandpa for a while. Because of the party? Lily asked, ever perceptive. Partly, I acknowledged. Sometimes adults need time apart to figure things out, just like you and your friends sometimes need space when you disagree. Will we see them for Christmas? Ethan's lower lip trembled. The question hit hard. Christmas was months away. I don't know yet, buddy. But I promise we'll have a wonderful holiday no matter what. Maybe we can start some new traditions of our own. Like what? Lily seemed cautiously interested. Well, maybe we could volunteer at the animal shelter on Christmas Eve, I suggested, remembering their pleas for a pet we couldn't have in our apartment, or have a movie marathon with hot chocolate and all the toppings. This sparked a brainstorming session, leaving them excited about new possibilities rather than dwelling on what might be lost. As I dropped them at school, a weight lifted. I was actively creating new joy for my family, not chasing approval we never fully received. That afternoon, I checked my email during a break. As expected, multiple responses from David and Susan. Susan's was brief, chillingly cold. Chloe, I'm shocked by your immaturity and ingratitude. After everything we've done for you and those children, this is how you repay us? Your father is devastated. I hope you reconsider this foolish decision before irreparable damage is done. David's was longer, equally devoid of self-reflection. I'm extremely disappointed by your email and decision. We have supported you through every mistake and poor choice, including your failed marriage. One difficult evening at an adult event, and you respond with financial blackmail? The mortgage payment is due today. If it's not paid, we'll need to dip into our emergency fund. Is that really what you want? Call your mother when you've come to your senses. Neither message contained an apology. Neither acknowledged wrongdoing. Neither expressed an iota of concern for how Lily and Ethan might be feeling after being ejected from the party. Their focus remained entirely on my overreaction and their financial predicament. I closed my email without responding and returned to work. A strange calm had settled over me. For the first time in my adult life, I had set a boundary with my parents and stuck to it, despite the discomfort. The $1,800 that would have gone to their mortgage remained in my account. Money that could eventually help secure a better home for my children. By Friday, the messages escalated. Sarah called my office 3 times before leaving a scathing voicemail. You selfish, ungrateful bitch. Mom and Dad gave you everything, and now you're punishing them because they asked your unruly children to leave an adult event? They've had to borrow money to cover the mortgage you promised to pay. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof. If anything happens to him, it's on your head. The old Chloe would have immediately called back, apologizing, arranging a transfer. The new Chloe, the one who'd watched her daughter destroy a family drawing out of hurt, simply forwarded the voicemail to her personal email. Documentation. Over the weekend, the flying monkeys arrived in full force. Distant relatives I barely spoke to suddenly felt entitled to text their opinions. Aunt Laura called to check if I was having some kind of breakdown. David's golf buddy somehow got my email address to explain how heartbroken my father was. I maintained radio silence with everyone except Aunt Carol, who, to my surprise, offered unwavering support. I've watched Susan and David favor Sarah for years, she admitted during our call. The way they treated you and those beautiful children at the party was shameful. Stand your ground, Chloe. Sometimes family needs a wake-up call. By the 2-week mark, the barrage had somewhat subsided. David and Susan had apparently made alternative arrangements for their mortgage, as Sarah gleefully informed me via text that they didn't need my charity after all. Through it all, I focused fiercely on my children and myself. I scheduled a consultation with a therapist to process my complicated family feelings. I planned fun weekend activities for Lily and Ethan to create new memories. At work, I accepted a challenging new project that could lead to the promotion I'd been working toward. The $1,800 mortgage payment I didn't make went into a savings account. Labeled New Home. The first step toward independence from my cramped apartment. For the first time in years, I was investing in my own family's future, rather than subsidizing my parents' lifestyle. Then, exactly 17 days after I sent the email, the doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon. Lily and Ethan were building a fort in the living room. Through the peephole, I saw my parents standing there. The moment of reckoning had arrived sooner than expected. My hand hesitated on the doorknob. Through the peephole, they looked smaller somehow. David's shoulders slightly stooped. Susan clutching her purse, knuckles white. For a moment, I considered pretending we weren't home, but that would only delay the inevitable. Lily, Ethan, I called, keeping my voice steady. Can you please go play in your room for a bit? I need to talk to some grown-ups. Is it Grandma and Grandpa? Ethan asked, his head popping up from behind the fort's blanket wall. They'd heard. They'd recognized the voices. Yes, it is. I need to speak with them privately first. Okay. Lily's expression clouded, but she took her brother's hand. Come on, Ethan. We can finish the fort in my room. Once they'd gone, I took a deep breath and opened the door, maintaining a calm exterior despite my racing heart. Mom, Dad, I said. This is unexpected. David stepped forward immediately. We need to talk, Chloe. May we come in? I nodded, stepping aside. Susan glanced around the apartment, her familiar look of barely concealed disapproval sweeping over Lily and Ethan's fort remnants, the modest furniture, the cramped space. Where are the children? She asked, her tone demanding their presence. In their room, I replied calmly. I'd like to speak with you first before involving them. David didn't sit. He stood in the center of the living room, his posture rigid, anger poorly disguised as parental authority. This has gone on long enough, Chloe. Your mother and I received a notice from the bank yesterday. If we don't make a payment by Friday, they'll begin foreclosure proceedings. I was clear in my email about why I stopped the payments, I replied, maintaining eye contact. Have you considered my conditions? Conditions? David's voice rose, incredulous. We are your parents, not business associates. You don't get to set conditions. We've given you everything, Chloe. Susan interjected, her voice adopting the wounded tone she'd perfected over decades. Supported you through college, helped with the children when they were babies. One difficult evening, and you punish us financially. This isn't about one evening, I said quietly, the words steady despite my racing pulse. It's about years of judgment, comparison, and double standards. The anniversary party was simply the breaking point. Oh, so dramatic, Susan sighed. You've always been sensitive, ever since you were little. The dismissal of my feelings, so familiar it almost felt scripted, only strengthened my resolve. Lily destroyed a drawing of our family last week, I told them, my voice catching. She tore it up because she didn't think you wanted to be in our pictures anymore. That's what your behavior is teaching my children, that they're somehow less worthy of your love and respect than Sarah's kids. That's ridiculous. David scoffed. We love all our grandchildren equally. Your actions suggest otherwise, I countered. And actions matter more than words, especially to children. Susan dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, though I noticed no actual tears. We drove all the way here to make peace, and you're attacking us. Robert, I told you this was a mistake. From down the hallway, a door creaked open. Lily appeared, her expression a mix of concern and fierce determination. "Why are you yelling at my mom?" she asked, her small voice steady despite the tension. "Lily, please go back to your room," I said gently. "No one is yelling, sweetheart," Susan said, her tone instantly shifting to sugary sweetness. "Grandma and Grandpa just came to visit." Lily didn't move from the hallway. "You made my mom cry last week, and you made us leave the party when we were being good." The directness of a child, unfiltered by adult politeness, hung heavy in the air. David looked genuinely taken aback, while Susan's pleasant mask slipped momentarily. "Lily, please take Ethan and go to your room," I repeated, more firmly this time. "I'll be there in a few minutes." She hesitated, but eventually retreated. Once I heard the bedroom door close, I turned back to David and Susan. "I think it's time for you to leave," I said quietly. "This isn't productive. We're not leaving until we resolve this mortgage situation." David insisted. "We can't afford the payments on our fixed income. You know that." I laid out my terms clearly, I replied. A genuine apology to the children. Acknowledgement of the double standard. Family counseling. A commitment to equal treatment going forward. Counseling. David practically spat the word. "We don't need some stranger telling us how to treat our family. We raised 2 daughters successfully without any of that nonsense." "Then I can't help you," I said simply, my voice unwavering. "I will not continue financially supporting a household that treats my children as lesser." Susan's expression hardened. "So that's it? After everything we've done for you, you'll let the bank take our home?" The guilt trip was so predictable, I almost laughed. "You have options, Mom," I said, feeling a strange surge of power. "You could downsize. David could take a part-time job. You could ask Sarah for help. Mark's a successful dentist, after all." David's face reddened. "We would never burden Sarah like that. She has her own family to support." But burdening me, a single mother, was perfectly acceptable. The double standard was so blatant, it almost took my breath away. Susan gathered her purse, signaling her retreat. "I don't recognize you anymore, Chloe. The daughter we raised would never be so callous." "The daughter you raised finally learned to value herself and her children," I corrected her. "And that's not callousness. It's healthy boundaries." David made one last attempt. "If you don't resume the payments, don't expect to be welcome in our home again. Think carefully about what you're doing to this family." I opened the front door. "I have thought carefully. And I've decided that my children deserve better than conditional love based on perfect behavior." "So do I." They left without saying goodbye to Lily and Ethan, confirming everything I'd said about their priorities. As the door closed behind them, I leaned against it, exhaling slowly, releasing the tension in my chest. Lily's bedroom door opened again, and both children peeked out cautiously. "Did Grandma and Grandpa leave?" Ethan asked. "Yes, buddy, they did." I knelt to their level. "Come here, both of you." They ran into my arms, and I held them tightly, breathing in the scent of Ethan's shampoo, the laundry detergent on Lily's t-shirt. "I want you both to know something very important," I said, looking into their eyes. "You are perfect exactly as you are. You deserve love and respect, always. And I will never let anyone make you feel otherwise. Not even family." Lily studied my face. "Are we still their grandchildren?" The question broke my heart. "Yes, absolutely. Sometimes grown-ups disagree about things, but that doesn't change who we are to each other." "Will we see them at Christmas?" Ethan persisted. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "But I promise you, whatever happens, we'll be okay. We have each other, and that's what matters most." That evening, as I tucked them into bed, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and peace. The confrontation had gone exactly as expected. No acknowledgement, no apology, only attempts to guilt and manipulate. But for the first time, their tactics hadn't worked. The next morning, the consequences of my stand began to manifest. Sarah, apparently, had been busy overnight, posting a thinly veiled account of the situation on Facebook, heartbroken watching my elderly parents facing possible foreclosure because someone they supported for years has abandoned them in their time of need. Families should always come first. Ungrateful karma. By lunchtime, my phone buzzed incessantly with notifications from mutual acquaintances and distant relatives. Some expressed concern, others outright judgment. A few even sent direct messages asking if I was really going to let my parents lose their home. I deleted the social media apps from my phone and focused on work. That afternoon, Ms. Davies, my supervisor, called me into her office. "Chloe," she began, her expression serious, "I received a concerning phone call today. A woman identifying herself as your sister accused you of financial mismanagement and unstable behavior." My stomach dropped. "Sarah called my workplace?" Ms. Davies nodded. "She suggested we review your client accounts, given your erratic decision-making. I want you to know I shut that down immediately, but I thought you should be aware." "I'm so sorry," I began, mortified that my family drama had spilled into my professional life. "Don't apologize," Ms. Davies interrupted. "I've worked with you for 6 years. Your integrity and judgment are beyond question." She paused. "That said, is everything okay? This sounds serious." Briefly, I explained the situation, the years of mortgage payments, the anniversary party, my decision to stop enabling their behavior. To my surprise, Miss Davies didn't look shocked or judgmental. Instead, she nodded with deep understanding. "I went through something similar with my brother years ago," she revealed. "Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with family. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing." Her support meant more than she could ever know. As we concluded, she added something unexpected. "The Richardson account needs a new lead advisor. I was considering you before this happened, and I'm still considering you. The promotion would mean a significant pay increase, enough to perhaps finally secure that new home I'd mentioned for Lily and Ethan." The opportunity, arriving precisely when I'd taken a stand for my family's well-being, felt like divine confirmation I was on the right path. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived from David and Susan's bank. The mortgage had entered pre-foreclosure status due to missed payments. The formal documentation made the situation terrifyingly real in a way emails and arguments couldn't. My parents truly would lose their home if something didn't change. That night, I couldn't sleep. Despite everything, the thought of my parents in their 60s facing housing insecurity troubled me deeply. I still loved them, despite their flaws, despite the pain they'd caused. But resuming payments without addressing the underlying issues would solve nothing. After hours of contemplation, I called Andrew, my attorney friend, again. "I need your professional help," I explained. "I want to draft a legal agreement regarding financial support for my parents, with very specific conditions." 2 weeks later, I sat in Andrew's office, David and Susan across the table. The mood was somber, stripped of the emotional manipulation from our previous encounter. The foreclosure notice had, apparently, made them more pragmatic. "I've invited you here because I'm willing to help with the mortgage again," I began, my voice steady, but only with clear, written terms that protect my children and myself. David started to protest, but Susan placed a restraining hand on his arm. Andrew slid the agreement across the table. "This document outlines Ms. Reed's willingness to resume mortgage payments under specific conditions." David and Susan scanned the document, their expressions darkening as they read the terms. Regular, scheduled visits with Lily and Ethan in neutral locations, not at their home where Sarah's family was often present. Attendance at monthly family counseling sessions. No disparaging comments about my parenting, career, or life choices. Equal treatment of all grandchildren at family events. Immediate cessation of payments if any terms were violated. "This is insulting," David muttered, slamming the paper. "You're treating us like children." "I'm treating you like adults who broke my trust," I corrected him, my voice firm. "Adults who've shown they need clear boundaries." Susan looked up from the document, her eyes weary. "And if we don't sign? Then I wish you the best with your housing situation," I said calmly. "But I won't continue enabling behavior that hurts my children." The silence stretched, heavy with decades of family history and unspoken expectations. Finally, Susan picked up the pen. "Susan, you can't be serious," David protested. "I'm not losing our home over this, Robert," she replied tiredly, using his full name. "Just sign the paper." One by one, we added our signatures. There was no celebration, no reconciliation, merely a business transaction between estranged family members. As Andrew made copies, I felt no triumph, only a quiet, resolute certainty that I had finally put my children's well-being first. That evening, as I filed the agreement away in my tiny home office, Lily appeared in the doorway. "Is everything okay, Mommy? You look sad." I smiled at my perceptive daughter. "Everything's getting better, sweetheart. Sometimes fixing things is a little sad at first." She considered this with the wisdom only children possess. "Like when you have to clean out a cut before it can heal?" "Exactly like that," I agreed, pulling her into a hug. "Sometimes things have to hurt a little more before they can start healing properly." As I held her, I realized that was precisely what I had done, cleaned out a festering wound in our family dynamic. Whether it would heal perfectly remained to be seen, but at least now, there was a chance for something healthier to grow. 6 months passed. Summer turned to fall, fall to winter's first snow. Through the changing seasons, our family dynamic evolved, painfully at times, but with unmistakable progress. The legal agreement proved more effective than I'd dared hope. David and Susan, faced with the concrete reality of losing both their home and their relationship with their grandchildren, complied. The first counseling session had been excruciatingly awkward. David checked his watch. Susan offered minimal details. But by the third session, genuine communication began to emerge. "I never realized how much our comments affected the children," Susan admitted during our fourth session. "When you said Lily tore up a drawing, that stayed with me." Dr. Winters, the counselor, had a gift for questions that bypassed defensiveness. "Susan, David, can you recall times in your own childhoods when you felt compared to siblings or cousins?" The question unlocked something in David. He spoke haltingly at first, about growing up in his older brother's shadow, the athletic, popular sibling who effortlessly gained their father's approval, while David worked twice as hard for half the recognition. "I would never want Ethan to feel that way," he said, the connection between his past and the present visibly dawning on him. These revelations didn't instantly transform our relationship, but they created space for understanding. The rigid perfection David and Susan demanded began to make more sense when viewed through the lens of their own unhealed wounds. Our first supervised visit with the children took place at a neutral location, the City Botanical Gardens. I watched cautiously as Lily and Ethan approached their grandparents, their body language hesitant. "We brought something for you," Susan said, presenting each child with a small gift bag. I tensed, ready to intervene if the gifts created uncomfortable comparisons. Instead, I was surprised to see thoughtfully chosen items matching each child's interests. A geology kit for Lily, who had recently developed an obsession with rocks, and a dinosaur model kit for Ethan. "Did Grandma tell you I like rocks now?" Lily asked me later, her expression confused but pleased. "I mentioned it during counseling," I explained, equally surprised Susan had listened and remembered. The winter holidays approached, the first since our confrontation. Rather than the traditional Christmas Eve at David and Susan's, we arranged a compromise, a Christmas lunch at a restaurant, followed by ice skating. Sarah and her family were invited, but declined, creating an unexpectedly intimate gathering. Without the pressure of hosting or Sarah's perfect family, as comparison, David and Susan seemed more relaxed, more present with Lily and Ethan. They listened intently to Ethan's detailed explanation of dinosaur classifications and asked Lily thoughtful questions about her rock collection. When Ethan spilled hot chocolate on his new sweater, Susan simply helped him clean up without a single critical comment. Progress that brought unexpected tears to my eyes. As for Sarah, our relationship remained strained but was slowly thawing. In January, she requested we meet for coffee, without parents or children. "I still think you went too far with the legal agreement," she said bluntly, stirring her latte. "But I've noticed things in counseling. Patterns I didn't see before." "What kinds of patterns?" I asked, cautiously optimistic about this rare moment of vulnerability from my perfect sister. Sarah stared into her cup. "Mom and Dad do compare the kids. And they've always held you to a different standard than me." She looked up. I benefited from that, so I didn't question it. That wasn't fair. It wasn't a full apology, but it was acknowledgement, something I'd never expected from Sarah. As we parted, she hesitated, then added, "Grace has been asking for a sleepover with Lily. If you're open to it, maybe we could arrange something." The cousins' relationship, previously restricted to formal family gatherings, began to develop independently. Lily and Grace discovered shared interests in science and art, while Ethan and Leo bonded over superhero movies. Watching them play together, without the weight of parental judgment, brought a joy I hadn't anticipated. Professionally, the Richardson account had indeed become mine, bringing the promised promotion and salary increase. By February, I had saved enough for a down payment on a modest 3-bedroom townhouse in a good school district. Not extravagant, but a significant upgrade from our apartment, with a small backyard and a bedroom for each child. The day we moved in, Lily and Ethan ran from room to room, marveling at the space. "Is this really ours forever?" Ethan asked, his concept of home ownership charmingly vague. "It's really ours," I confirmed, watching him claim his bedroom by arranging dinosaur figures on the windowsill. Lily approached more cautiously, as was her way. "Can I paint my room purple?" "We can paint it any color you like," I promised, relishing the freedom of ownership after years of rental restrictions. That evening, as I unpacked kitchen boxes, my phone rang. Susan's number. "We drove by the new place today," she said after I answered. "It looks lovely, Chloe." "You've done well." The compliment, offered without qualification or comparison, felt foreign coming from her. "Thank you. The kids are thrilled to have their own rooms. Your father and I were wondering." She hesitated. "Would it be all right if we brought dinner next weekend? To help with the unpacking? Nothing fancy, just takeout." The offer, practical, respectful of boundaries, extended without assumption or guilt, represented exactly the kind of healthy interaction I'd been hoping for. "That would be nice," I replied. "The kids would love to show you their rooms." 6 months earlier, I couldn't have imagined such a conversation. The legal agreement had created structure, but the real change came from consistent boundaries and the gradual rebuilding of trust. My parents were learning, imperfectly, with occasional backsliding, that respect was a prerequisite for relationship. The family dinner in our new home wasn't perfect. David made one comment about the kitchen's modest size. Susan couldn't resist straightening picture frames I deliberately placed at casual angles. But when Ethan accidentally knocked over his water glass, soaking the new tablecloth, neither of them reacted with criticism or disapproval. David simply helped clean up, while Susan assured Ethan that accidents happen to everyone. Later, after they'd left and the children were in bed, I sat on our small back patio, wrapped in a blanket against the early spring chill. The events of the past 6 months played through my mind like scenes from someone else's life. The confrontation, the legal agreement, the counseling sessions, the slow, painful reconstruction of relationships I'd once assumed were permanently damaged. Setting boundaries with my parents had been the hardest thing I'd ever done. Harder even than weathering my divorce or rebuilding a life. As a single mother, family relationships carry the immense weight of history, the power to wound more deeply than any other connection. Standing firm against the tide of familial expectation and obligation had required strength I hadn't known I possessed. Yet that difficult stand had yielded unexpected gifts. My children were growing more confident, secure in the knowledge that they were valued for themselves, not for their perfect behavior. My relationship with my parents, though irrevocably changed, now held the potential for genuine connection rather than performance-based approval. And I had discovered my own worth, not as the family disappointment, the divorced daughter who couldn't match her sister's achievements, but as a woman of integrity who protected what mattered most. The mortgage payments continued, but they were no longer a one-sided obligation. They represented a mutual agreement between adults, with clear expectations and consequences. More importantly, they no longer came at the cost of my self-respect or my children's emotional well-being. As spring bloomed around our new home, I realized that the most valuable lesson wasn't just about standing up to my parents. It was about breaking generational patterns by refusing to accept conditional love and favoritism. I was teaching Lily and Ethan what healthy relationships truly look like. They were learning that love shouldn't require perfection, that boundaries are acts of care, and that their worth isn't determined by comparison to others. That knowledge, That my children would carry these lessons into their own relationships someday made every difficult conversation, every painful confrontation, worthwhile. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who didn't respect you or your children? What was the hardest part about standing up for yourself? Let me know in the comments below. I'm reading everything.